Good afternoon, everyone. We'll be starting in 5 minutes.
Am I audible? Good morning. Very good morning to Shruti, Muskan. Am I audible?
Hello, sir. Sir, you are on mute.
Hello. Hello. Good morning. Hello. Am I talking? Am I audible now? Hello. Hello. Am I audible now? Shruti, am I audible? Muskan, am I audible? मेरा आवाज आ रहा है क्या? I'm trying to talk.
Yes, sir, you are audible. You can go ahead and talk.
Right, right. So, welcome all. Welcome the panel. Muskan. All students call you Muskan Didi. Aniket Kumar is from now entering in third year. He is from second year. Shruti knows you. She was with you earlier, and let's welcome Muskan today. She's one of the student of 2020 batch. I believe 20 batch, right? Am I right?
No, sir. 2021 batch.
Yeah, 21 batch. And was master coordinator during the lockdown period. She has done a lot of work on MCAT assessment. She has done a lot of work on arranging the training programs, what you all are doing. And she got Alexander Graham Bell Award of MS Scholarship. She also got best grade score She also got best job offer, and she was a Mesto Student of the Year, MIT OE, and Best Performer of the Year. Welcome to Muskan. Muskan, we have now imparted MCAT from first year. These students have MCAT done about 2-3 times, and these students are practicing MCAT well. So ZS has declared the dates probably in the month of first week of August. So we want after your recruitment in ZS, there is no recruitment from MIT OE. We want to increase the participation of ZS in terms of MIT students. So I would like to request all the coordinators to take over for the question and answer sessions, how you are doing, what kind of coordination you did, just repeating the questions, how MCAT helped you, how coordination has helped you to getting into placement, and what juniors should do to get for best capacity product job. So over to Shruti, Aniket, Sanket, and welcome Muskan. Once again, I wish you all the best. Now, all the students, please ask questions. Your questions will be answered. All the questions will be answered. Muskan is there. Muskan will be helping us till you get placed. She will be coming again and again. And this time, during working hours, she has find time, and she is there for you. Thank you very much, Muskan. I wish you all the best. Please continue the session. Thank you. Pramod Dasturkar, Head Corporate Relations at MIT Academy of Engineering, Alandi, Pune. Thank you.
Hello. We are pleased to invite Muskan Pandey. She is successfully placed in Avaya with a package of 12 LPA. Over to you, Muskan.
Okay, yeah. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Shruti, for the introduction. For this session, I'll talk about a few points. First, I'll give my introduction. Then, I'll talk about my course, like what I studied in MIT. Then, I'll talk about Avaya. What was the preparation plan? How did I prepare for placement in general? Then, I'll talk about the rounds in Avaya. I think Avaya is coming to your campus, so you'll need that more. And then I'll talk a bit about my resume and my profile. First, my name is Muskan Pandey. I graduated from MIT in 2021 as a computer science engineer, and my CGPA was 9.14, and I had no life backlogs. So for my that was about my studies. Then why did I choose Avaya? So Avaya was one of the companies that came in the beginning, and it is a good product based company. So and it was offering a software developer role, which was the role I was interested in. So that is why choosing Avaya, like that was the reason for choosing Avaya. Then for the preparation part, so my strategy was very simple for the preparation part. I wanted to first be capable enough to clear the apti rounds, which are the initial rounds, and then maybe focus on the coding rounds. So from the beginning, my first focus was in the apti part, which was majorly covered by AMCAT tests and the sessions we had in the college. So aptitude part was covered there completely. Other than that, I did not need to practice anything from outside for apti. But if you're still facing issues with the apti part, then I would suggest that like there are multiple problems and everything given on Geeks for Geeks and interview bit. So it has technical as well as non-technical questions and tips for preparation of interviews. For the preparation of the technical part, that is the core principles of CS and the coding part. So for the core principles of CS, what I did was from second year in our curriculum we have data structures, then DBMS, and then in third year we have OS networking. So the basics of all these subjects are they are asked frequently in tests and even in the interview rounds. So I revised all the basics of those. So I use Geeks for Geeks and the presentations which are provided to us through college. So I developed a basic understanding of all of these concepts, and I made notes so that I don't forget frequently. Like for example, if somebody asks you the OSI model, so like it should be like you should remember it like like at the tip of your hand. So you should like probably, if you're forgetting it frequently, probably like write it down and then stick it somewhere in your house so that you can see it frequently. And like this is an easy example, but these type of questions are actually asked in the interview. Like in my interview at Avaya, they had asked me about OSI model also. So it helped when you make notes, and if there's something you might tend to forget, so you stick it around in your house so that you don't forget it. So like coming back to the core principles of CS. So uh, basics of and like theoretical part of OS and data structures. Okay, not data structures that much, but of like the theoretical part of data structures, but DBMS, networking, and then like a bit of low level like compiler design, and like all these subjects are really necessary for you to have a good understanding. Then comes the data structures, which is like according to me the most important part of the placement process if you're sitting for SDE roles. So every company will focus on data structures, be it a product based company or a service based company. So focusing on data structures is very important. What I did is that I started from the scratch again. I think around 4 months prior to my placement. So I started from arrays again and practiced till graphs in the span of 4 months. And like when the placement was very near, so like if when about a month was left, so I made sure that I solved at least three coding problems in a day. Like it can be like not necessarily three of them could be of data structures, but I had to solve at least three, so that first thing is I gain confidence about solving coding questions. Second, like you get a pattern about the questions and the solutions that you are supposed to come up with, so it helps you think better and faster. So that way, like, and also don't practice these problems on the IDE. Instead open a Google document and start typing there, because many a times in placement rounds they ask you to write the code on notepad, so that you don't have any help from IDE perspective. So start writing the code on notepad or Word document, or by hand also, so that you realize what raw mistakes you're making. For all of these, like the practice questions, and even for the core concepts of practice question, all of these you can find on Geeks for Geeks and Interview Bit. So there's this website Interview Bit. There also you can find questions about all the MCQs about all the concepts of CS, and even the non-technical ones for the aptitude related. Uh, then about the interview. So first there was a test, the first test, which had four sections. Uh, the sections were aptitude, technical MCQs, and then two coding sections. So in the aptitude sections, we had 35 questions, and we had a time for like we were given a time of 30 minutes. So like the questions are not that tough, but like they were a bit mathematical, so that consumes time. The calculation and everything. And like since the number of questions were greater than the number of minutes, so there was a time crunch, which again increases the pressure. Similar pattern was followed for the technical MCQ. There were 30 minutes and 35 questions. And the questions were about OOPS, that is object oriented programming, then constructor destructors. Then there were some algorithms related to data structure. For example, they had given code to reverse a linked list, and then you had to like there were four options, and you had to select the correct option. So what happens is, even if you know the code, so you have to go through all the options, and it takes time for that. So, and since there were more questions and the number of minutes, so you had to be quick there, point like finding out which is the like where is the correct logic. Then there were questions about pointers and then networking, and yeah. So then there was like there were two coding rounds. For the first coding round, there were three questions in 15 minutes. Now you didn't have to write the code from scratch for these questions. You just had to write the function. So they had given the basic template, and the input output where it was everything done. You just had to write the logic which was required in the function. and there were 3 questions to be done in 15 minutes. So that did not take much time once you understand what you have to do. And the questions were about arrays, strings, and linked lists. So like it did not take like it was not very difficult on that level. Then the next coding round was on uh, like it had 15 minutes and one question. And I had everybody had got questions around trees and graphs. And my question was the map coloring. So like you have to color the entire map, and you cannot have same color on the adjacent sides. So you might have seen that question before. So like since I said that I had practiced all these, so I was able to like get it at that time. So I was able to complete that coding round also. So this was the first test. So around 150 people had appeared for the first test, and I think around 30 had qualified, 30 or 25. Then there was the first technical interview. So in the technical interview, like it started with the introduction. Then like they were scanning through my resume. So whatever projects I had mentioned, they questioned me about those. So like when whatever projects you're mentioning in your resume, be sure to know the skills that you have acquired from these projects. For example, I had a project which was it was related to machine learning. So like the technologies, the tech stack which I had used in that project, and like what I had done in that project using those technologies, that had to be like they were, like I was asked about all that. So and the uh, like the problems you face during the development of the project, then uh, like all those things. Then the other things that I had mentioned in my resume. So they asked me about my internship, the challenges I faced in my internship. Then another thing about the projects part. So they asked me how could I scale this project into a product, like what challenges would I face and how would I go about it. So you have to think a bit about that also, like the larger picture of your project, whichever project you're mentioning in your resume. Then they asked me about the language preference. So I was like I am comfortable in C++. So I told them about, like I said, C++. Then they asked me basic questions of C++ about like output prediction. So they built up various scenarios, like suppose like there's this class, and then it has two constructors, one the default one and the one parameterized one. Then it is inherited by another class which overrides the constructor, and then an object is created of the second class. So which constructor would it call? So questions like that. And it was all orally. So like they gave you the flexibility of writing it down, but it had to be answered orally. So so the questions related to oops. And then they asked me about like data structures that can be used in various scenarios. So they asked me that what I think is the data structure that the Facebook uses. So questions like that. Then they asked me about differences between pointers and references. Then what are virtual classes. Then to explain polymorphism, then abstraction versus encapsulation. So most of my questions are based on oops and C++ related parts only. Then so I had mentioned my GitHub link on my resume, in my resume. So they opened my they shared that screen and they opened my GitHub, and they've checked out what kind of project I had put on GitHub. Then there's this contribution map on GitHub, so they checked how frequently I was contributing and all those things. Then after this round, no, okay, so yeah, so they asked me about like I said, OSI model and TCP model also. But uh, I was not very confident about my about my knowledge in the networking domain. So I told them that I'm not very confident about this. So then they switched to OS, and I was able to answer those questions. And they asked me DBMS related questions also. So SQL versus no SQL, and then later they asked me general questions like uh, what do I know about dynamic programming, the advantages of dynamic programming, the applications and everything. So like I was honest about not knowing network like much about networking, and that was not an issue in the interview. So like if I would have said okay, I'm aware, and then not been able to answer, then probably that could have been a negative. But I was upfront that okay, I'm not very confident about this topic, so they switched to another topic, and that was cool. Then after this interview, uh, the next day there was managerial round. So for this interview, I think around 25-30 people were there, and around five or six were shortlisted for the managerial round. So managerial round also started with my introduction. They asked me about my family, where I live. So this was managerial plus technical. So they asked me a bit about technical questions also. Then they asked me about my projects, like they were scanning through my resume. Then the co-curricular, the extracurricular activities, and if all those things. Then the most challenging thing, the hardship that I faced in my life. Then my strengths and weaknesses. Then why this company? Like what do I know about Avaya and why Avaya? Then they asked me about my plans for higher education, and at the end they asked me like if I had any questions. uh, Also, like whatever I had mentioned in my resume, I was asked about almost everything, from projects to internships to the skills I had mentioned to the like co-curricular and extracurricular activities. So what I learned from them, what skills I acquired, what challenges I faced, what hardships I faced. So I was asked some or the other questions about all of the things in my resume in both of the interviews. uh, yeah, so after that, after the manager interview, I was selected from AOE, and one other person was selected from WPO. So two people were selected. So this was about the interview. Then my work and role in Avaya. So I'm working as a software developer, and like you might have seen in the job description, so there are various domains in Avaya. UC, CC. So UC is Unified Communication, C is Contact Center. So you did not worry about all these things now, because they would not ask you about any of these in the interview. These are the various domains under which Avaya has projects. So you would be allocated in one of these domains, and your project would be about, like my project is about like my project uses Java and microservices as the tech stack, but there are other people whose tech stack is different from mine, like they have Node.js also. So you did not worry about what kind of role and what kind of tech stack you would be given. There's no training period here, but like once you transition into your team, your manager will give you ample of time to catch up on the tech stack and whatever things you need to brush. Then like my internship and project which I had mentioned in my resume. So I had mentioned two internships. One was I interned at IIT Bombay as a computer vision intern in after my second year, and one was I interned as a data science consultant in a Mumbai-based startup Locobus. That was after my third year. So they asked me what the projects I had done in these internships, the challenges I had faced, and like the tech stack in general, and a bit about the tech stack. Like for example, like my domain of both of these internships was machine learning and data science. So they asked me about my interest in those, and like how confident I was about the algorithms, and like in data science like what part of data science did I work in. Yeah, like I worked in visualization part, so like what all exactly, like which libraries did I use there, all those things. Then for the project part, so I had mentioned two projects again. Yeah, three projects. One was the second year mini project, then minor project, and then the major project which I was going to take up. So we had started working on the major project at that time. So they asked me about all the three projects, then uh, like what all things that I face, and then they asked me to choose one of these projects and like show my plan how would I turn the project into a product. Then in my year, the eligibility criteria for appearing for Avaya was no backlogs, no history of backlogs, and CGPA 8.9 plus. Yeah, these two were the only criteria. Yeah, so this is roughly about my preparation, the process of like the interview process of Avaya, and a bit about my resume and stuff. So if you have any questions, then you can ask those specific questions.
Yeah. We have a question in the comments here. It says, what was the scenario one day before the interview and what all things did you practice one day before? So, if you could elaborate on that.
Yeah. One day before, like obviously, I was very nervous, and what I practiced was like I didn't go on like diving deep into any other concept. I just once brushed up basics of OS and OOPS, because I have seen in like I had seen in other interview experiences that they mostly ask questions related to all these things. So, and even in the like the initial round which was there were a lot of questions about OOPS and OS. So I brushed up only the basics of that. Yeah, that's about it.
Okay, guys, if you have any more questions, you can put them in the chat. Meanwhile, Muskan, what other companies did you apply to before Avaya, or was Avaya your first try?
Yeah, that was my first try.
Avaya was your first try. Okay. So, could you elaborate a little on the kind of roles we have available in Avaya? Like, if I were to apply, so what roles would be available to me?
Like you would get the position of software developer only, but then again it depends upon the project. So like we have projects which require tech stack, like Go languages there. Then there are other projects in which Node.js and all these things are used. Then the project I am in that uses Java and microservices. Then there are projects related to the hardware part also, where you have to use Bash and other low level design things. So like you would get a project of any domain, and before allocating the project they ask you your preference also, like if you have any language preference, if you have any domain preference. So like I had mentioned I wanted in Java, so I got a project related to Java.
Okay, so we have that choice during placement.
Yeah.
Okay, we have another question in the comments from Vasudha this time. How did you get an internship related to ML after second year?
So actually, in my first year, I was in the Robocon team of our college, and there my work was like we were exploring the machine learning aspects of the movement of the bot also. So I had acquired a basic experience of machine learning through that. So after that, I did a few courses in my first year vacations, and then in second year also I worked like I had interest in it, so I did a bit more studying in that area certifications. So that helped me acquire an internship in ML domain.
Okay. Then Anish is asking if what was the cutoff for the first round. I guess he's referring to the interview.
Uh, I'm not sure about the cutoff, because they had shown like they had sent out the marks for the first round, but then like I don't clearly remember how much was the cutoff. But I would say that if you are like if you're confident with the coding questions that carry the maximum weightage, so you should be in the good.
Okay. Watsil is asking how internship helped you getting this job. Like, did they question like if what you've learned in the interview and how is that going to apply to your job?
Yeah, so internship might not help that much, like to impress them or anything like that. Like if you obviously if you have done a very good internship, that is a plus point. But what they focus mostly is on what I've learned in the internship, the challenges I faced, and they like if there was a technology I was new to, how did I learn it, and then how did I overcome that challenge. Uh, that part of it. So like they focus more on what you did in the internship than what the internship was about.
Okay, so they basically look at what I have learned during that period instead of just
Yeah,
looking at the title or the overall internship.
yeah. But like obviously, if you have a good internship, then that would add as a benefit. So yeah.
Okay. I have a few questions. If they are not from the comments, but I have it
Yeah.
here. Uh, what did you add in the resume, and how did you select what to keep in your resume?
So I like we had to use the Calyx spot generated resume only. So I added two internships and three projects, and I had one paper publication at that time. So I did that, and I added my like what was my programming language preference, and like a bit about the framework and tools. So, for example, I was confident with C++ and Python, so that is the thing I added in skills. Then I was comfortable with Git as a tool, so I added that. And I had a bit of experience with machine learning and deep learning, so I added that in my skills. So these were the skills that I had added. Then the two internships that I had done, I added those. And while adding the internship, I just added the skills, like the tech stack associated with the internship. So the intern title, the company name, and below, like I added a column skills, and then, for example, Python, and then TensorFlow, and then all those things for both the internships. I follow the similar format for the projects also: the name of the project, the year in which it was developed, and the GitHub link to the project, and the skills that I used in that project.
Okay. Okay, we have a question from Sejal here. She's asking for coding practice, which platform did you use? She's
So
referring
I
to
used
competitive programming, I guess.
Yeah, so for practicing for practicing, I used Geeks for Geeks, and I used to be active at that time on CodeChef a bit. So I used to practice competitive coding on CodeChef, but I would suggest that go to practice on Geeks for Geeks majorly, because competitive coding is difficult to practice on, because like I think data structures is the main focus of the interview. So for that, Geeks for Geeks has like a vast set of questions available. And again, like I said before, also like don't practice on the ID given there or any ID if you of your choice. Uh, like try to write the code in Notepad or Word document.
That's good advice. Okay, we have a question from Sahil here. How did you face the questions of abroad studies? So,
Actually, I had taken my GRE at the time, but I did not mention that. And in the presentation, the company presentation, I had mentioned that they give sponsorship for education abroad too. So I brought up that point in the interview. Like I said that in your presentation, I noticed that you had said this. So probably not immediately, but in near future, I would require some sort of upskilling. And that time, I would this thing about Avaya did catch my attention, that they encourage education and they sponsor that. So I would like to avail that facility in future.
mm, okay. Ganesh is asking what was the eligibility criteria? I guess for sitting in the placement.
For Avaya, there was no history of backlogs and 8.9 plus CGPA.
Okay. So Vatsil is asking again how BTech Guru conducted by our college helped you. Did you have BTech Guru in the first place
Yeah,
during
yeah.
your batch?
Yeah.
Okay.
So BTech Guru and AMCAT tests were the reason that I did not have to, study for APTI separately. So we had a regular tests on BTech Guru. So giving those tests also covers up most of the concepts of the questions in APTI. And if you're stuck somewhere, you come to know through those questions. Okay, like these type of questions I'm not getting, so you can practice those. Even the BTech Guru platform has many aptitude resources. So I
Hmm.
used to give I used to give small tests on that also related to specific topics.
Okay. Apart from the compulsion that the college put in, you also put an extra effort on the platform.
Yeah, because like there are some topics which you're not very confident about, so
Mm-hmm.
you can go and practice those there.
Okay. Okay. Vasudha is asking which platforms did you do courses on?
So I did courses on Coursera only.
Coursera was your go-to
Yeah,
MOOC platform, right? Okay.
yeah.
So can you tell us a little bit about what courses did you do? Even titles would be okay.
So I had done the machine learning course, which is there by Andrew Ng. Then there's this course, Algorithmic Toolbox, which is I don't remember the university which has
Some
put it up,
Russian
but
university.
yeah, some
Yes.
Russian university. So, yeah, so that is a good course. Then I had done a few courses related to brushing up of Python and C++ concepts, but I did not mention those in my resume. That was only for practice.
Hmm. Yeah, you basically selected them out for better
Yeah,
resources. Okay.
yeah.
Okay. Then Nilesh is asking, what would you say for students who are weak in coding or students with non-CS branch? Okay. Any specific advice for such students?
So, like, if you are weak in coding, but if you're willing to learn, then obviously practice can take you to better places, even if you're from a non-CS branch. But if you're interested in non-technical roles, like for example, like various consultancies also come to our college for placement. So maybe you should focus on that. So, like, I had a friend who was in CS only, but he was not interested in technical roles. Like, he was not interested in software developer roles. So he only applied for analyst roles. So ZS, then Deloitte, and Michelin. So roles like that. So, but if you're willing to, like if you're actually interested in CS roles and you are not confident about your skills, then I would say that like practice can take you to better places. And there are people who have cracked, SDE roles being from different branches also.
Yeah, correct. Aditya is asking, can you reveal the coding question asked during interview? Like, can you do that, or do you remember?
So they didn't ask me to code during the time of interview. What they did was they asked me mostly about various scenarios about like if like I had given an example about the class having constructor and then base class inheriting and overriding the constructor. So they asked me questions related to that in the interview. For the like for the first round in which there were coding questions, so I don't remember the three, like the 15-minute part, like the three coding questions, but for the one coding question which was there for 15 minutes, that was a map coloring question.
Okay, yeah, the classic map question, right? Okay, Himanshu is asking, when did you start proper preparation for your interviews and how long did it take you?
I started in mid May, so our placement started in August. So I started in mid May, so it took about 2.5 months, and like I had started revising my basic concepts in January, but like proper placement preparation I started in mid May.
Okay, so do you have any advice for your juniors, like how long ago you should have started, or do you wish you could have done things differently if you given the chance?
So, like I would say that I'm not sure about how long ago would like how would that matter now, because since your placements have already started. But then I would say that practice your like practice coding every day, because that will help you build on your confidence also. Plus, it is possible that the questions you have practiced might get repeated in the interviews. So practice coding questions every day.
Okay, okay. Were you asked to explain your projects?
Yeah, so like what I did in the project, then the challenges I faced and my role in the project.
Okay, so Mithun here says you would like some tips for explaining these projects.
So you can start with what your project is about, like a 1 or 2 line brief summary about what the project is about. Then the skills, like the tech stack that you use in the project, and what was your part in the project. And then probably they would be questioning you about what difficulty you face while developing. So, like you can put out one of the challenges, like for example, obtaining a particular data set was like if it is a machine learning related project. So obtaining a particular data set was difficult, or like like getting domain knowledge about a particular algorithm was difficult, so things like
Hmm.
that.
Okay. Then Atharvir says, I think you've answered this during the initial talk, but he's asking, were questions related to OS DBMS asked during interview?
Yeah, so they asked me questions related to OS. So they asked me about scheduling algorithms. Then they asked me to write a bash script code for it was something related to for loop only, but it was a very basic bash script code. Then they asked me about DBMS. They asked me about difference between SQL and no SQL, and if I had done any project in DBMS domain.
Okay, I guess those are all the questions we have from our audience for now. So, guys, you have another minute. If you have anything, you can post it in the comments. I'm going through them. In the meanwhile, thank you, Muskan, for being here and answering all the questions. We really appreciate it. Uh, and
Thank you for having me.
yeah, there are no more questions. So, thank you very much. We'll be closing the session here.
Thank you.
So we wish you all the best for your future endeavors, and we also wish all our audience luck in their
Yeah.
placement process. So, guys, you can all leave the session, and thank you, Muskan. We will be closing now.
All the best to all of you. I hope to see some of you in Avaya next year.